Hey guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to tint your headlights with VVivid Light Smoke Tint, and the example car today is going to be Hyundai Genesis. So the first thing that you'll want to do is make sure that your headlight is cleaned fully, and then cut a piece that's going to be big enough to cover the entire side or the entire face of the headlight, left, right, up, and down. Again, I'm using VVivid Premium Plus Light Smoke Tint for headlights and taillights. You can see there that I've already got a piece cut, and I'm just double checking to make sure that I have full coverage of the headlight itself to account for the bends and curves, as well as having enough excess on the left side, right side, up and down. So having confirmed that, what I'm doing next is I'm just going to go ahead and start to peel off the backing paper, the vinyl from the backing paper. This is a dry application vinyl. It's essentially clear vinyl wrap that you can use on your headlight and taillights, but also for other things as well. So what I'm doing there is I'm just basically peel off about half of the vinyl from the backing paper, and then I'm going to apply it to the flattest portion of the headlight, in this case the very front part there. I'm leaving part of the backing paper on so that I can get this down, because this is a clear vinyl, and so if you get fingerprints behind the part that you're going to be applying, you'll see those fingerprints through the vinyl. Again, so what I'm doing is I'm tacking down as much as I can onto the flattest part of the headlight here, using my squeegee to assist. I'm giving it just a little bit of attention. You can see in my left hand on the right side of the screen, what I'm doing is giving it just a touch of tension and then laying it down. Once I feel that I've got it fully anchored, I'm going to go ahead and peel off the rest of the backing paper, and then I'm going to start pulling it back just a little bit so I can kind of get it set up really well, so I can start laying down even more. Now that the rest of the backing paper is off. Again, I just left on the backing paper to prevent myself from grabbing the middle of the film there. I did leave enough excess on the edges there so that I can hold on to that, and that's the areas that will be cut off. As you can see, I'm squeegeeing and continuing to move towards the flat sides of the headlights to set this up, because what I'm doing is working to where it becomes very curved, and then from there I'm going to give the vinyl a little bit of heat and stretch it around to work its way around that compound curve of the bulbous part of the headlight there. So I'm just continuing on using my squeegee. You can see I'm kind of pushing it on, and I'm starting to get into like a half moon or a half circle sort of shape there, you can see. That's because I'm approaching the curvature part of the headlight there, where it goes around the projector beam. And so I'm going to continue on to just make sure that I've got this set up very well. I'm going to use my squeegee a little bit more to lay down a little bit more around. I'm going to try to get rid of as many wrinkles as possible before getting ready to use some heat to assist me here. Now that I've got that set up to where I think I need it to be, I'm going to grab my heat gun. And then from there, I'm going to add heat all across the remaining vinyl that's not been applied so far. I'm using a heat gun because it gives me consistent heat that's not too quick. I do have it on low heat. I don't need to necessarily blast this super hard. I just want to soften the vinyl enough so that I can stretch it just enough to conform it around the curved part of the headlight there. Alright, so now that I've got the vinyl heat soaked, what I'm doing is I'm stretching it around, and you can see I'm pulling in a triangular motion. If you look at my hands and the angle of the vinyl, I'm pulling up, down, left, and right. And I'm trying to get basically around the main curved area, the radius, if you will, of that curved part of the headlight. So now that I've got that laid down and tacked towards the back, I'm just going to try to glass out or smooth out the remaining part of the headlight there towards the bottom. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin basically the vinyl down to the rest of the headlight there on the top side for now, because I have that nice and smooth. And then I'm going to move a little bit towards the center and then work my way down towards the bottom. So I'm continuing on, just maneuvering that vinyl that I've glassed out, or when I say glassed up, meaning smoothed out the vinyl around the curved part of the headlight, over and across the top. And then I'm moving towards the middle, basically the radius of the headlight. And then I'm going to start working my way down and around the curved part of the headlight towards the bottom, where you can see that I'm working right there. I am lifting the vinyl up a little bit. This is essentially clear vinyl wrap, so it is repositionable. You just need to be careful not to put your fingers underneath the part that's going to be applied. So I've reached a point where I need a little bit more heat to help out on this very curved part of the headlight. And what I'm doing there is, one, softening the film and also relaxing it a little bit, because I did have some stretch in there. And so now that the film has been softened and basically shrunk back to its original shape, while it is still warm and still soft and malleable, I'm basically just working the film down to the edge of the headlight there. You can see that I wasn't quite satisfied with how that lay down in particular, so I'm pulling it back up. Again, repositionable film. That's what's so great about this dry application. You can pull it up several times and then reheat, stretch, shrink, etc., so that you can get the results that you're looking for. So I'm going to give that a try again. You can see I gave it a little bit of heat to help myself out there, giving it a little bit more stretch. You can see that triangular shape that I'm pulling the vinyl in. And then now I'm glassing it out, which means basically making it smooth, and then applying it down to the surface of the headlight, to the edge of the headlight where it meets the fender in this case. Now that I've got that very bottom part laid out, what I'm going to do is bring the vinyl up to a good point, and then apply a little bit more heat and finish stretching out to conform the rest of the vinyl around the rest of the radius, or the curved part of the headlight. Basically, it's the part that goes over the top of the headlight projector and meets towards, or goes back towards, the point of where the yellow marker lights go. You can see where my left hand is pulling, and I'm basically going to be shooting for that corner of the headlight on that particular area. So I laid that down and tacked it, and so now that I've got it glassed out again, I'm just laying the vinyl down onto the surface of the headlight, smoothing it out, and applying the vinyl down while it's still warm and malleable and easy to work with. Going back across the top there, going across the middle and down towards the bottom. Then I'm kind of going back a little bit towards the front area where I started. Make sure everything is nice and smooth, nice and flat, and sealed down, that I didn't miss any air bubbles. Now that the back side of the vinyl is cooled off, I'm continuing to work the vinyl back down to the edge of the housing where it meets the fender. And you can see that I'm using the hard edge, between the hard edge and the soft edge of my squeegee, or the hard edge where I just have some Teflon tape applied, and then the soft edge, meaning where I have a buffer applied, going between the two. The hard edge helps me get towards the edges of the headlight and take care of any sharper wrinkles by pressing those out, and the softer edges mostly for general application. Now that I've got all the edges down to the edge of the housing, I'm lifting it back about 1/4 to 1/2 an inch. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat the vinyl with my heat gun. And what I'm doing there is shrinking the vinyl back, because the vinyl, as it was applied, has been stretched to the edges. Now, vinyl has a memory, meaning that once it gets hit with heat, it's going to shrink back to its original shape. So what I'm doing is pre-shrinking or shrink wrapping the vinyl before the actual edge of the headlight housing, so that by the time, once I've shrunk it back and have the vinyl relaxed, there's no tension on the edge of the headlight housing itself. And that's important because you don't want, it may look great when it's glassed out and stretched all the way to the edge and nice and smooth, but as soon as the sun hits it, because of the memory effect, meaning that the vinyl with heat will want to return to its original shape, i.e. shrink back from what you stretched it to, that will pull away from the edges. So what I'm doing is going ahead and taking care of that problem up front by pulling back just a little bit, 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch, hitting it with heat so that the vinyl goes ahead and shrinks. And then once it's relaxed and all the shrinkage is taken care of, while the vinyl is still warm, I just basically work the vinyl down and mold it, and therefore leaving no stress or tension on the edge of the vinyl, which would allow it to pull back, or significantly reduces any likelihood that it will pull back. So I'm just doing that across the top side now, lifting it up again, just bringing it back off the edge about 1/4 to 1/2 an inch. And then I'm going to hit it with some heat, and you can actually see the vinyl shrink itself down and relax where it had a lot of tension in there, and you can see it just on its own smooth out and turn to glass. And then now that it's shrunk back, all I'm doing is applying now the relaxed vinyl all the way to the edge of the headlight housing edges there. So I'm just continuing that process down towards the front side, Not really too worried about that because that's the area that I applied with no tension. So what I'm going to do is get the bottom front side here, and you can see what I'm going to do is make a relief cut at that very bottom point of the headlight, because it creates a there's such a severe curve there that it's going to cause the vinyl to bundle up or pop up. And so what I did there was create a relief cut, making now a tab which I'm holding, which is independent from the back side of the headlight that I had worked earlier. So again, pulling things up just a little bit and then giving it some heat to shrink it down. You can and you saw, hopefully, how the vinyl basically glassed itself out and shrunk back, and then it relaxed. It smoothed out and relaxed. And while it's in that smoothed out, relaxed, stress-free, stretch-free state, I just take my squeegee and then mold that vinyl down into the edge of the headlight housing. Again, even though my arm is blocking, that's essentially what I'm doing on the bottom front side there, just lifting it up, even though I know there's really little to no tension already. Giving a little bit of heat to take out any shrink that would happen, and then applying the now relaxed vinyl and pre-shrunk vinyl to the edges of the headlight housing. Worked my way to the front corner there, same deal. And then once I had it relaxed, gave it a little bit of heat, and you can see what I'm doing is I'm molding the vinyl around that corner. That way it's I'm molding it while it's under no tension, stress-free, and just basically rounding the, conforming the vinyl around to the shape of the corner of the headlight. So I'm just taking a little bit of time to make sure I got it looking nice and tight and clean, applying heat as required, and then just making sure everything is set in nice and tight, and we'll make for a good clean cut here, which is essentially what I'm doing. I'm prepping all the edges in order to be able to cut the vinyl, the excess vinyl that I have all the way around off of the headlight. So now with that corner, there's a little bit of a gap and some corner spaces there. So what I want to do is take my micro squeegee now that I'm using and making sure everything's tucked in nice and tight, and that everything will be nice and clean, and so that I have a good, clean, even cut once I do reach a point where I'm comfortable that everything is ready to go. So basically what I'm doing is taking a few minutes here to do some setup to make sure that everything will go smoothly once I go in to cut the vinyl. Because once you start cutting the vinyl, if you hadn't set up and you mess up, it's practically game over if you mess up while you're cutting, and then you'll have to redo the whole thing again. That's why I do like to take a little bit of extra time to make sure everything is set up, everything's tucked in nice and tight. I've gotten rid of all the excess stress and stretch as much as possible, and that I've got everything nice and basically a good cut line all the way set up so that I have no issues when it comes time to trim things out. So on that bottom right side of the headlight there, what I'm doing is making sure that since I did have a good stretch on that part of the headlight, I just lifted it back up again one more time, and then gave it some more heat to make sure that it was truly relaxed and that any tension in there was truly taken out. Again, I'm just going a little bit extra here to make sure that the durability of the application of this vinyl is 100% spot on. Because I don't want this thing to fail on the customer or the client's vehicle, because that's just not good form. You want to build trust and know that you've done a good job, and do a job that you're happy and proud to put your name to. And so that's what I'm trying to do here. Yes, does it take a little bit of extra time? Of course it does. Did I already do this process? Yes, I did. But again, I like to be extra thorough, and make sure that I did a good job, and that I'm wrapping this vinyl for the long term versus the short term. And the short term being, yeah, it looks great for upon delivery to the customer or the client. It looks great for maybe about a week, but then a week later, everything starts popping back and pulling back, and then the customer is upset with you. And that's exactly what I do not want to have happen. And so I do like to take a little bit extra time. Now you can see that everything was all set, and I was satisfied with how it was relaxed. Just took my micro squeegee and defined a nice sharp line, which we'll be using to cut the vinyl once I'm at that point. Heating everything up again to make sure everything is indeed set, taking out any additional movement being any additional shrinkage that I might have missed. And then the heat also will help me identify if there's any trapped air bubbles elsewhere on the surface or edges of the headlight itself. And you can see that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just applying heat all over to see if there's any areas that I might have missed. And the heat will tell you if you miss an area, because if there's an air bubble there that you might not see necessarily without the heat will cause the air to expand in that bubble, and the bubble will become visible and more prominent, and then you can address it at that point. So what I'm doing now is getting ready to cut, and I'm taking my blades, my knife, utility knife with snap-off blades, snapped off a nice fresh blade, or snapped off the blade so I have a nice fresh super sharp blade, and I'm finding an edge to start my cut. And basically what I'm going to do is use the side of my blade, put it against the housing of the headlight, and then float basically the tip of the knife in between the headlight, in this case, and the fender, and that way I'm cutting and using the headlight side or edge as my guide, and that way I don't cut the paint of the car, and also I don't cut the headlight housing itself. So you can see I'm taking my time, I'm going slow with a super sharp blade. It's very important to have the sharpest blade you can as possible so that it slides right through the vinyl without any grabbing or chattering, because that's how you can have accidents where you can cut the paint because you start adding too much resistance, or it can just jump out because you're pulling so hard because your blade isn't just slicing through the vinyl. The knife should be sharp enough. These knives, when you snap off a new blade, are razor sharp, so it should slice through the vinyl like butter. If there's any resistance to it, either you've hit something, or something that's stopping you from cutting, or you just need a new blade. And while it may be sharp enough for other purposes like cutting food, for example, which you want the razor sharpness so that you can just slice through this vinyl like a hot knife through butter. Curves, you take a little bit of extra time because you want to make sure that you get the curve nice and clean, nice and even, and that there's going to be no chatter or bumpy pieces to it. Oftentimes when you start cutting around a curve, you might hold the blade at an odd angle, and you actually can end up cutting kind of short, and then around that curve, the substrate or whatever surface that you cut around or applied the vinyl to will show through. Alright, so now I've taken care of that front side of the curve. I'm coming across the top, the back edge of the top. There's a nice hard line for me to put the side of my blade against to use as a guide. There's no fender piece there, so I'm using the side hard edge of the headlight housing itself as my guide. Again, having that super sharp blade makes all the difference in a good clean cut, but also while I'm cutting, I'm adding a little bit of attention to the vinyl that's being cut off to make sure that my lines are nice and clean and tight. Now I'm coming to the corner, just making sure I got everything set up, and then start to peel away some of the excess. Make sure you just don't rip away once you think you're done cutting, because you might not have actually cut all the way through, and if you just rip away, you'll pull away vinyl on the applied part that you didn't intend to, and it could make it difficult for you to apply it properly, because now if you've pulled it, you stretched that vinyl, and then trying to put it back to the exact shape that you just had it may be a little bit difficult. Alright, so I'm peeling off the remainder of the excess vinyl. Trying to be careful, and then just toss that away. And then what I like to do afterwards, after I've peeled off the excess vinyl, is take my heat gun and then go all the way around the edges with a little bit of heat to make sure everything seals down nice and tight, and that if there are any loose edges that you'll see them right away, and then you can address those. But also, in this case, VVivid is a heat activated vinyl, and so by adding a little bit more heat towards the end there on the edges, you're actually activating the adhesive so that it will grab harder onto the surface of the substrate that you are applying the vinyl to, in this case the headlight. Again, I'm going through all the edges, and then where the back part I didn't use my micro squeegee because it was an open edge or an empty edge there. And then now that I'm at the part where I have the headlight housing meeting the fender, I'm going to use my micro squeegee to help tuck in against the edge of the headlight. The micro squeegee is just basically a thin stick-like squeegee that's nice and thin, so you can get into these tight recesses such as this. Again, hitting everything with heat to make sure that I didn't miss anything, being extra thorough, and then going over everything one more time. Is it a little bit of overkill? Maybe, but also I'm taking care of essentially the post heating here. One cautionary note as far as heating and working on headlights and taillights, you want to be sure to control the heat. Again, I like to use low heat when doing this, and I also keep the heat moving. The reason being, if you concentrate heat on these plastic headlights and taillights, you run the risk of cracking them with too much heat. And so just be careful when you're using heat. Keep it moving, keep it on low. Right now, actually, I do have it on high, but you can see how much faster I'm moving the heat gun around and in bigger swaths versus like a slow motion around all the edges. All right, guys, so this headlight is, for all intents and purposes, fully wrapped. I'm going to bring the camera in for you to take a closer look. So you can see all the edges are nice and tight. There's no air bubbles on the surface of the headlight. You may see a little bit of the air release pattern in the vinyl there, but that will eventually melt away in the sun. So I hope this video has been instructive and informative, and if it was, please give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Thanks, guys.